We have one more speech left, and that is mine. When I grow up, I want to be a teacher, and that's what I said when I was about your age. Yes, I had my phases of wanting to be a doctor and a dancer, but I would always come back to wanting to be a teacher.
And you are a teacher and a mom.
I am a teacher and I am a mommy, yes. I'd like to share a quick story with you. A few years ago, I worked at a learning center, and I had a 11-year-old girl, and she had many learning disorders, some of which were concentration problems, focusing issues, trouble just having attention. She just had the inability to add, even simple numbers like 5 plus 6 and 2 plus 4. And what followed were months of pure hard work and struggles and disappointments and frustrations and just sheer perseverance on both my part and hers, until the day came, the day that we had been waiting for. She could add. We spent the entire session just adding. She was absolutely so happy. I was elated. And when we shared this with her mom at the end of class, she had tears in her eyes, and she hugged me, and she thanked me. And she told me the reason we had seen so much improvement in her in such a short time was because I was one of the very few teachers in her life that truly believed that she could learn. And I will not forget those words. And that night, when I couldn't wipe the smile off my face as my head hit the pillow, I knew that this is it. This is what I wanted to do. To be a small part of that child's accomplishment was so precious, and for me, no other joy could be compared to that. And right now, as many of you have come in and shared the positive differences that you have seen in your child's life as a result of them coming to these classes, I smile as my head hits the pillow that night, and I thank you. And I thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of your child's learning. Banyan Kids began 2 years ago as a result of some of my aspirations as to what education, both academic and otherwise, needs to encompass. What started out as trackouts and summer camps have now materialized into these coaching classes. And much of what I do in these classes is evolved from my academic background in psychology and education and my work experiences. But the most important factor that shapes how I view parenting and education and just who I am standing in front of you today is motherhood. I always wonder, do I teach them empathy, but at the same time, do I teach them to be bold and brave? Do I compliment them? Do I criticize them too much? Do I listen more than I lecture? Do I teach them the right values? Can they compete in this competitive world? Can they stand up to a bully? Can they survive in my absence? And as I ask myself these questions, a sense of fear engulfs me. And looking at a lot of your faces and knowing a lot of you on a personal level, I know that these kind of questions haunt you also. Here's an analogy that helps me. In his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families by Stephen Covey, he compares a successful family to a pilot with a flight plan. Over the course of the flight, wind, rain, turbulence, air traffic act upon the plane, and the pilot only ever stays on the flight plan about 10% of the time, yet he makes it to his destination successfully. How? Because every time he goes off, he comes back to it. And I tell myself that it is okay that I'm not perfect. It is okay that I'm not on my flight plan 100% of the time. Because as long as I have a flight plan and I keep coming back to it every time I go off too much, I will be okay. As an educator, a very similar scenario. So when I was building the Banyan Kids in my head, I went through numerous such questions, and I continue to ask them today. How best do I deliver what they need to know? How can I make learning fun for them? How can I make it relevant? How can I make the hours they spend with me as productive and as enriching as possible? And I'm not going to be coaching them forever, and my time with them is not limitless. So when they leave these classes and my coaching stops, What lessons do I want them to be taking away from the Banyan Kids? These and other such questions are what defined my most important principles of the Banyan Kids. And tonight I'd like to talk to you about the two integral aspects, mastery learning and character education. What is mastery learning? Before I talk to you about it, I'd like to show you a quick clip. Khan Academy is something most of you children do. This is Salman Khan, the founder of Khan Academy, talking about mastery learning. Take a listen.
In a traditional classroom, you have a couple of homework lectures, and you have a snapshot exam. And that exam, whether you get a 70%, an 80%, a 90%, or 95%, the class moves on to the next topic. And even that 95% student, what was the 5% they didn't know? Maybe they didn't know what happens when you raise something to the zero power. And then you go build on that in the next concept. That's analogous to, imagine learning to ride a bicycle. And I give you a bicycle, maybe I give you a lecture ahead of time, and I give you that bicycle for 2 weeks. And then I come back after 2 weeks, and I say, well, let's see, you're having trouble making left turns, you can't quite stop. You're 80% bicyclist. So I put a big C stamp on your forehead. And then I say, here's the unicycle. But as ridiculous as that sounds, that's exactly what's happening in our classrooms right now. And the idea is, you fast forward and good students start failing algebra all of a sudden, and start failing calculus all of a sudden, despite being smart, despite having good teachers, and it's usually because they had these Swiss cheese gaps that kept building throughout their foundation. So our model is learn math the way you learn anything, like the way you learn a bicycle. Stay on that bicycle. Fall off that bicycle. Do it as long as necessary until you have mastery. The traditional model, it penalizes you for experimentation and failure, but it does not expect mastery. We encourage you to experiment. We encourage you to failure, but we do expect mastery.
We do expect mastery. I do expect mastery in my classes too. This mastery learning is not a term coined by Salman Khan, but there's over a century of research proving how beneficial mastery learning and individualized learning is. Most of the work stems from this person called Dr. Bloom, and he states that every child can master any given concept as long as we're able to increase our variation in instructional approaches and extend learning times for those who may need so. The mastery learning framework looks something like this. So you go teach a child a concept, you give them enough time to practice that, and you go and assist them. If the child shows mastery, you provide some enrichment before you move on to assist them again using different materials. Usually a child shows mastery in the second or the third cycle if they haven't shown it the first time around. But in spite of much research proving how effective mastery learning and individualized learning is, why isn't every single one of our children experiencing it? There are two reasons. The first one is quite obvious, so I won't spend too much time talking about it. It's the student-teacher ratio in our classrooms. What we expect from our teachers in the current education system, teachers just do not find it practical, or they can't afford to implement this kind of learning in a classroom. Teachers find it much easier to implement teacher-paced learning rather than this type of student-paced learning. The other reason why it's not very popular is because of this. It is our desire to place children in advanced classes and accelerated learning, especially in math. We push our kids too hard, fearing that if we don't, we are depriving them of that edge that is needed to shine in this competitive world. But many higher level maths, such as algebra, the concepts are very abstract, and if the children are not, there needs to be a sense of developmental readiness for the children to comprehend that concept. And if they're not there, it is a perilous path to put them on. Dr. Bowler, a professor of mathematics education at Stanford University, she states, and I quote, "It is a misconception to think that children will ultimately do better if they meet math content earlier and faster." And she adds that a plethora of research has proved that students who advance in math content before they are ready often lose critical thinking skills and reasoning abilities. Second grade is built upon first grade. Third grade is built upon second grade. So if there are portions of first grade a child does not understand, then it is most certain that they're going to feel lost somewhere along the way. So this approach that I take with mastery learning, it allows me to make sure that there are no gaps in their learning. But the challenge for me is, in the sake of pursuing mastery, I shouldn't make learning uninteresting or tedious for the children. So I need to introduce new concepts every now and then. I need to go back and forth between standards, all the while making sure that mastery is achieved in every learning domain. Next year, I'm planning to try peer tutoring in my classrooms. Every now and then, I can pair a child who is almost at mastery with a child who's struggling. For the child who's struggling, it gives a different angle of instruction. And for the child being assessed for mastery, if you can teach someone something successfully, nothing else is a better measure of mastery. I'd like to share another quick story with you here. Many years ago, my family and I moved to New Zealand. I had just turned 12 and I was about to start a new school year. Form 2, which is the equivalent of second year of middle school here. And the lessons that I learned that year is not comparable to anything else I've learned in school. I was bullied from the very first day, every day for about half of the school year. I was the only Indian child in my class, so I stood out like a sore thumb being the new kid. And I didn't try to fit in either. My culottes would be about this long, whereas the other girls would have it here. I had a strong Indian accent. I was very petite. Not much has changed now, I know, but the lunches mom would pack me would be looked upon with such disgust. And to tell you, the icing on the cake is I used to love wearing bindis. And I would wear one to school every day, sometimes a fancy one. So I really stood out. But the endless name calling, the notes stuck on my desk, the last one to be picked for anything, and the ostracizing would just rip me apart. And I would come home crying every day. I still can remember my father's face as he would watch his daughter try and make the day sound not as bad as it really was. But my father sees through me. There was no hiding. So when my parents went and talked to my teacher about it, he assured them that he knew what was going on and that he was doing his very best. He was. Each day I realized that he spent less time teaching us about math and grammar and more time teaching us about caring, friendship, prejudice, equality. He would talk to us about bullying, share quotes and stories with us, and make it very clear that nothing is more important in this world than treating each other with love and respect. That is the fundamental aspect of being a human being, he'd say. And you will not believe the transformations and changes I saw in every single child that year, including myself. I had kids secretly come to me and apologize. The notes subsided. I would be included more. I had more friends. It was purely astounding, and it was all thanks to Mr. McIntosh. I guarantee you that if you go and ask any one of those 22 children in that class if they remember that year and Mr. McIntosh's valuable lessons, I bet every single one of them would, because that's how deep it was. And at the end of the year, I thanked Mr. McIntosh for going above and beyond his duties and looking out for me and instilling moral values in all of us. And he thanked me. He thanked me for teaching him lessons on grit, perseverance, tolerance, and the assertiveness to stay on top of my academic goals in spite of what was going on around me. Character education at its very best. My very early lessons on the two most important parts, or the two parts of character education. Moral character and performance character. In today's culture, there is a heavy emphasis on teaching our children cognitive skills, math, memory, logic, and reasoning, and the inflated role that it plays in the success of our children. What we fail to realize, and what growing research is proving, is that teaching them non-cognitive skills, persistence, curiosity, self-control, and social agility, all of these things matter much more. But for many of us here, we think of these character or personality traits as something innate, something that cannot be changed. It can. Many studies, including the most renowned study by Pearson and Seligman, have proved that it can be. They define character as a set of abilities or strengths that are very much changeable, entirely malleable in fact. These are skills that you can learn, that you can practice, and that you can teach. So how do I go about teaching these characters to my children in the classroom? Discussing quotes by Mahatma Gandhi or Mother Teresa, reading Aesop's fables, or playing the What Would You Do scenario games, learning about the Good Weave Project and child slavery. All of these make children think. I see children watch me with such intensity as I discuss these topics with them. I see children are moved by it. Many months ago, I met this family whose son used to come to my track out camp. And they shared with me that their son wanted to give away all of his birthday gifts from a party. And when they asked him why, he told them about a video that we saw in camp about a 10-year-old giving away all of her Christmas presents. So not everything they'll remember, but there'll be one thing that sticks, one aspect, one element, and that is enough. If that helps them overcome an obstacle, if that helps put life in perspective during a downtime or motivate them to bring about a change, however small, then it is very, very worth it. I would like to extend these classroom activities to the community next year by doing small group projects as the Banyan Kids family, and I'll be sharing those details with you in the coming weeks. But teaching moral character is one aspect of teaching character education. The other equally important part is teaching them performance characters, things that will make them succeed as an individual. How do I go about teaching those? There are two phrases I do not allow kids to say in my classroom. I forbid it. One, I didn't have time. We all have 24 hours and we choose what we do with it. You didn't do your homework, not because you didn't have time, but because you didn't make time for it. This latter phrase just allows children to prioritize their tasks and helps them understand, accept, and internalize accountability for their work. The second is I am not good at it. I have asked children not to say it so many times that I hardly hear it in my classrooms anymore. If someone just says it out of frustration, just a glance is enough for them to add in the word yet at the very end. This is one of my attempts in shifting a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. What do I mean? Whether or not intelligence is malleable or not is still subject to plenty of debate. But however, a psychologist at Stanford University, Dr. Dweck, she's found a remarkable thing. Regardless of the facts of the malleability of intelligence, children perform much better if they believe that their intelligence is malleable. She says that it is very important to teach your children that our brain is like a muscle and that it grows stronger when we challenge it, when we struggle and fail and learn from it. And it is these children that know this form the growth mindset. And over and over again, studies have proved that it is these children that believe that their intelligence can be improved, outperform and achieve much higher grades than kids with a fixed mindset, those who believe that their intelligence is fixed at birth. Fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Very simple difference that can transform our lives. So let's not worry about nature or nurture or whether our intelligence is inherent or not. But with the rock-hard evidence that we have, let's give each child the belief that can profoundly affect the way that they lead their life. In my classes, I'm always sure to appreciate them for their hard work and not their smartness. I tell them that success is a result of hard work. And if you want to get better at anything, all you need to do is try. Give it a 100% and you will get better. But even people with high intelligence, excellent moral values, they fail to raise to the top. Why is that? Dr. Duckworth from University of Pennsylvania has found through research that it is because of these 4 letters. grit. She explains grit as the passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. It's having to stick to something until you make it happen. Doesn't matter how long it takes. She talks about grit as living life like a marathon and not a sprint. From studying kids in spelling bees to cadets in military academy, from looking at teachers in rough neighborhoods to salespeople, the one predictor of success above all else was not IQ or GPAs or how good looking you are or your physical health. It was about how much grit you had, how gritty you were, how you were able to persevere. How do you go about building grit? One way is that I talked to you about mastery learning a few minutes ago, to have children stay on a task until they master it, to have them persevere and stick to it, doesn't even if they fail and struggle, all the while reminding them of the growth mindset is one way you can go about building grit. Because only children that see that this failure is not permanent and that through hard work they can get better will get better. And sorry, the last point that I want to touch on is curiosity.
If a teacher can spark a child's imagination and cultivate curiosity about the world around them, nothing else is more important. Those who are willing to teach themselves anything and to find answers to their questions, they are the ones who become lifelong learners. Most of you would have heard about my famous question box. A simple shoebox and an idea has turned into one of our favorite things to do. I encourage kids to drop any questions they may have and they feel empowered to be able to ask anything. Sometimes the answers are straightforward, and other times we have friendly debates, do science experiments, or research to try and find the answer. And not all questions need a definitive answer. Sometimes the question itself may prove more important than any answer that we could provide, like who invented God? So here it is: mastery learning and character education, the two core pillars that reflect the goal of the Banyan Kids. It is so moving and it is such an honor to be able to help a child understand the world around them and each other. These children make me laugh and they've made me cry, and I cherish the relationship I have with each and every one of them. There is always a constant battle within myself to be the person they want me to be and to be the person they need me to be. These children may forget what I tell them and what I do for them, but they will not forget how I made them feel and the belief that I had in them. And every day I want them to know that they matter. I want them to know that I believe that each and every single one of them could make this world a better place.